Hey everyone, and welcome to today's Explainer. Today we're unpacking a massive shift that's happening right now in the world of public relations and enterprise communications. For decades, PR measurement has kind of been stuck in the past. Think back to the days of physical clipbooks, or just endlessly scrolling through basic spreadsheets, completely obsessed with simply counting mentions and estimating impressions. But let's be real, the media landscape has grown infinitely more complex, and that old way of doing things, it just isn't cutting it anymore. Today, we're exploring how PR is fundamentally shifting away from simply counting those coverage outputs and moving toward extracting real-time strategic insights that actively shape a brand's reputation. Here is our roadmap for today's Explainer. We're going to cover the PR data problem, outputs versus strategic insights, core metrics that matter, why teams still struggle, the AI impact, and finally, how to engineer your reputation today. Okay, let's dive into this first section. The PR data problem. Now, on paper, PR professionals have literally never had access to more information. Coverage volume is up, channels have completely multiplied everywhere you look, yet despite this absolute wealth of data, comms leaders are essentially drowning in data but starving for true meaning. Think about what it feels like to walk into a quarterly business review with a massive stack of charts, line graphs, and volume estimates, but feeling completely unsure of what strategic story you're actually telling. So I want to ask you this direct question and really think about your own workflow right now. Are you producing coverage reports or are you delivering reputation intelligence? Because there is a massive world of difference between the two. If you're just assembling a list of links and reach estimates from the previous quarter, you're merely describing a story that has already been written. The ink is dry. That gap between having the raw data and using it to make a strategic, forward-looking decision, that's exactly where modern media analytics has to operate. To put this struggle into perspective, check this out. According to a 2025 analysis from Bright Valley Marketing, 31% of digital PR practitioners cite measuring the impact of their work as one of their top challenges. And what's really wild about that statistic is that it's tied with creative burnout. Let that sink in for a second. The fundamental challenge isn't getting the data. Getting data is actually pretty easy nowadays. The real hurdle is translating that data into something meaningful that survives a rigorous leadership review. It is an incredibly draining process to pull numbers that ultimately don't tell the executive team what they actually need to know about the company's standing in the market. Let's walk through the math of why this is so painful. A typical enterprise team monitors thousands of mentions every single month, but only a tiny fraction of those actually carry weight for the brand's reputation. We're talking high-authority outlets or heavily socially amplified stories. Without analytics that automatically surface that weighted layer, an analyst has to manually triage every single mention. And when you multiply that triage time by every brand, every competitor, and every market you track, it results in a massive compounding loss of strategic resources. Every hour you spend manually assembling a report is an hour you're not spending shaping a narrative. All right, moving right along to Section 2, Outputs versus Strategic Insights. So what is the most useful definition of modern media analytics for PR? Well, it's entirely functional. It's the process of capturing, enriching, and interpreting coverage data to turn it into insights that change decisions. And that last part is absolutely crucial. It's the golden rule. If a piece of analysis doesn't actually change what your team does next, it's not analytics. It's just documentation. Imagine a scenario where the data shows a specific PR campaign is generating massive volume, but the underlying sentiment is trending severely negative. True analytics empowers you to make a hard decision, like shifting resources away from that failing campaign and toward a different narrative that's actually driving a positive reputation. If it doesn't drive an action, it's really just noise. And this brilliantly illustrates the massive difference between these two concepts. Outputs are simply countable things. Clips, mentions, reach estimates, social shares. A report showing 240 placements last month, that's just an output. It tells you volume, but absolutely nothing about impact. An insight, on the other hand, is a conclusion drawn from those outputs about what's actually happening to your reputation. A report showing that the majority of those 240 placements clustered around a single emerging negative narrative about your supply chain, now that is a strategic insight, because it immediately tells leadership exactly where their attention needs to go to protect the brand. Let's look at Section 3, Core Metrics That Matter. So if we're moving away from simple outputs, we need specific metrics that actually correlate with reputation impact. Volume all by itself is just a vanity metric. I mean, you could dominate column inches for a week, but if the narrative is shifting against you, you're losing. Enterprise leaders are instead anchoring around these core metrics. First up, brand-centric sentiment. This filters out the industry noise and tells you the tone of coverage specifically relating to your brand. Second, dynamic share of voice. This shows if you're gaining or losing ground against competitors in real time. Third, publication tiering.
Because, let's face it, a mention in the Wall Street Journal should not carry the same weight as a random spam blog. Fourth, narrative clustering. This reveals storylines forming across multiple articles, so you can spot a theme before it breaks wide open. Fifth, LLM perception captures exactly how AI models describe you. And finally, social amplification measures your real reach beyond just the headline, via shares. These are the metrics that answer the big strategic questions.
The teams that are absolutely winning right now follow a very specific insight extraction workflow, and they do it daily. Not weekly, not monthly, daily. First, coverage is ingested in real time across news, broadcast, and social. Second, it's cleaned and enriched, automatically tagged for brand prominence, authority, and sentiment. Third, the analysis layer surfaces what's changing. This is critical because it spots a small snowball before it turns into an avalanche. Finally, the team applies strategic intelligence to the data. This means a comms leader can proactively walk into the C-suite and advise them to get ahead of a story rather than reacting defensively days later. This completely flips PR from reactive to proactive.
Which brings us to Section 4, why teams still struggle.
Despite knowing this ideal workflow, executing it is incredibly difficult. According to Demand Sage, 51% of digital PR teams still rely on disconnected manual tools. The data's out there, sure, but it just can't be assembled fast enough. This really boils down to three structural problems. First, data latency. Coverage forms in hours. If your system is telling you what happened 2 weeks ago, you're basically driving while looking only in the rearview mirror. Second, fragmented tooling. Stitching together a monitoring tool, a sentiment analyzer, and a giant spreadsheet destroys context. An article tag neutral over here might be negative over there. And third, the narrative gap. Most platforms organize data around isolated articles, not the broader storylines. It's like looking at a single puzzle piece and trying to guess the whole picture. True reputation lives in how all those pieces connect.
Now let's dive into Section 5, the AI impact.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the AI elephant in the room. Artificial intelligence changes everything in two fundamental ways. Sure, it supercharges the speed at which we analyze data. But more importantly, AI is no longer just a tool. It is a massive new audience consuming everything published about your brand. Large language models like ChatGPT and Claude are actively ingesting earned media and acting as the discovery layer for millions of users. How do these models know what to say about your company? Well, your PR coverage is literally their training data. If your earned media is consistently negative, the AI's answer to a customer asking about your brand will absolutely reflect that. That direct connection makes LLM perception a must-track metric for any enterprise today.
Because AI is accelerating the speed at which information travels, the shift to real-time analytics is the single biggest change in how PR measurement is practiced right now. The old model? It produced thick quarterly reports documenting a previous, settled cycle. The new model relies on real-time analytics, providing actionable intelligence on an unfolding cycle. Finding an emerging negative narrative on day 3 is manageable. You issue a statement, you call key journalists, you correct the record. But finding it on day 30? That is a full-blown crisis cleanup operation.
All right, our final section, engineer your reputation today. Let's bring all of these concepts together. What are the actionable steps you can take back to your enterprise teams right now? If you want to earn strategic credit from leadership, you've got to stop over-rotating on volume and start building these 5 insight categories into every single report. Number 1, emerging narratives. What storylines are forming and how fast are they moving? Number 2, competitive share of voice shifts. Are competitors quietly stealing your space? Number 3, message pull-through. Are your specific messages making it into the coverage? Number 4, tier-rated impact. What's the sentiment specifically in high-authority outlets? And number 5, AI characterization. How are large language models describing your brand to users today? The overarching takeaway here is crystal clear. Coverage data is only as valuable as the insights you extract from it. An endless list of URLs and basic reach estimates simply won't empower your team to navigate today's hyper-fast media landscape. It is time to stop counting mentions and start turning your coverage into high-level strategy. Every single piece of data needs to be leveraged to anticipate the next cycle, not just document the last one.
So, I'll leave you with this final provocative thought to take back to your organization. Are you ready to see what insight extraction looks like when it's engineered for how reputation actually forms today? It's time to abandon legacy clip counting and fully embrace the future of reputation intelligence. And if you want to see exactly how this is done, with real-time, narrative-level visibility and AI perception tracking, you absolutely need to visit handraise.com. They are completely setting the bar for enterprise media analytics. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. Take control of your narrative, and I'll catch you on the next one.